he could get Adonis on the track and be like, actually, I like my dad.
Oh my
You
God,
know?
that is something he would do. That is actually, you're not wrong. That's literally something he would do, I think. As a non-music listener, I had to have somebody who actually listens to music come in, you know, and educate the youth
Right.
on what's going on. Because
Uh-huh.
I'm over here, I am only invested in the drama. Like I am not as invested in the music part of this entire process.
Honestly, that's you're not even alone in that. So, you know, like, is there anything still at this point that you're like curious about, or are you sort of like wondering about this whole situation that you feel like
On the
you're
drama
kind of
front, have you seen like you've seen
not the drama front, but like, you know, what's the vibe? Why is this happening? Like, you know, or anything. I guess is there anything that you feel like you're still kind of like wondering about at this point vis-a-vis this whole back and forth?
I wonder how Drake is going to respond to this. If he responds to it at all, I feel like the most Drake thing to do here would be just like try to sue him for libel or something.
Right. You know, the thing is, like, up until this point, Drake has been just a master of controlling the narrative because historically he's just very good at kind of following trends. He and his team are very online. As I was kind of saying earlier, he's been great about sort of like, you know, keeping guys like DJ Academics like very close to him so that he can you know, essentially you know, use him to sort of like, you know, soften criticism against him. And you know, he just plays social media channels very well. But I feel like through this, Kendrick out Draked Drake. He has not allowed him to control the narrative for like even a second since he released Euphoria. Like, since he released Euphoria, the track has gone crazy. The fact that it's not a super accessible track worked almost in his favor because that caused people to listen to the song over and over and over and over, and that created more discussion around the track. You know, the thing is, while Drake's tracks are catchy and they're very direct and they're very to the point, and I think Push Ups was a decent response given that he had a lot of people to respond to. Like, people weren't replaying that track in the way that provably they were playing Euphoria, given that it's now currently the #1 hip hop song as far as streams go of the year.
Yeah.
And we're not even at the halfway point of the year yet.
And I think that's a way of out Draking Drake in a way that actually matters because like he always has, what does he have?
Really outraged him was that the moment that he went to take the narrative back, he just dropped the other track.
Yeah.
He dropped the other track. So he divided focus.
And he's outstreaming him. And he's outstreaming him, which I think is like the biggest skew because
biggest embarrassment. Is the biggest fucking embarrassment.
Because he has nothing if he doesn't have the money and he doesn't have, which obviously doesn't matter all that much. Like, it will matter if he's like talking to Rick Ross, but I don't think it matters as much when he's talking to Kendrick Lamar. It doesn't hit the same when he's like, "Oh, your house is shitty," right?
Right.
Like, because he's not a flexer in that regard. So I feel like the one thing that he could say is that as an artist, he's more popular. And right now, that's not the case. And the other thing that he could potentially say is for all of the Drake writers, he makes music specifically as like club hits. He makes top 40 hits that people love to listen to, that people can always listen to over and over again. And his music is not quote unquote boring or whatever. And now with this latest track, Not Like Us, I feel like he also is saying F you to that as well. So I don't even know where he can go from here as far as like what else he has in his arsenal. I guess the question I have is about the allegations. I heard you talk to Los Pollos a little bit, and I do agree with you. I think Kendrick has more of a cultural cachet, and therefore like slander against him, if proven true, will hurt more than against Drake, because like everybody knows Drake is corny and people don't give a shit. Like, he is more, Kendrick Lamar is more like he has designed himself as like as a person that is you know, flawed as an individual, but like still trying to do good. Whereas like nobody gives a shit about Drake being a good person.
Yeah, he doesn't sell himself that way.
Yeah, the fact that he might have a second child is not going to be as harmful to Drake's career as, or even the like, maybe not the pedophilia accusations, but like that he's like weird with minors and weird with teenagers. Like, people have known that for some time now, and yet they don't care. So
right. You know, Kendrick is also kind of like, you know, broadly going after his team as well.
Yeah.
And mentioning members of his team for sort of like being in on that as well. And, you know, I have no doubt in my mind. I was telling a friend of mine this like earlier today. If Drake, and a lot of people have, you know, sort of like cited the fact that like, you know, Drake kind of came out immediately and said, well, actually, I don't have a kid. which
Yeah.
if he does, you would think that that would be pretty like easily and quickly disproven. However, like if I'm Drake, and Drake is a pretty smart guy, if I'm Drake and what happened to me with Pusha T happened, considering the context of what Kendrick said, like, oh, you have a second child who's actually older than the child that we know about.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm Drake, and who knows how many, I'm not going to presume he has a million baby mamas, but you know, if they do exist, and I'm sure he knows that they do, if they do, like I'm going to them immediately and I'm NDAing, I am severance packaging, I am golden parachuting to make sure that no information comes out about this. And if you do leak it to anybody, like obviously, like, you know, you're done. I mean, you know, maybe there could be child support pursuits after that, but given that he officially resides in Canada, I don't know how the hell that could potentially work legally. Either way, I'm immediately going to those people and I'm making sure, using everything in my power, that they don't say anything. He'd be foolish not to. So if he does in fact have a kid, that may actually sort of like, you know, play into why he would be as brazen to hop online and say, well, I actually don't have one, because he knows nobody's going to pop out and be like, actually you do. Actually,
Yeah.
it's me, it's a child. You know, like,
That was an awful way to respond to that, by the way, in my opinion, what Drake did
oh,
with the Instagram
it was.
story of like,
It was.
I'm just laughing, lol, come on.
And personally, like, I don't necessarily think it's the worst move even for the kid at the end of the day. If Drake did in fact do that, it's maybe even a little admirable on some level, because Adonis, due to the beef with Pusha T, like he really had no choice other than to be in the public eye. Like that kid was literally outed to the world, you
Yeah.
know, by the internet in the midst of one of the hottest hip hop beefs, if not the hottest of the 2010s.
Yeah, it was
And,
awesome.
you know, if Drake did actually do his due diligence and make sure there were better agreements between him and people he did maybe happen to have a child with at some point, it's probably better for their sake that that maybe is possibly the case, because you don't want your second child doxxed, you know, or your third or your fourth or whatever. Someone saying Adonis is going to drop the next My Man freestyle. You know, if Drake gets Adonis on the next track,
I mean, he has sung before, right?
he could get Adonis on the track and be like, actually, I like my dad. I think
Yeah.
my dad's,
That, oh my
you
God,
know,
that is something he would do. That is actually, you're not wrong. That's literally something he would do, I think. I feel like there's a very Drake thing to do.
it could be a Drake thing to do.
He texted his mom saying Rick Ross is a racist.
Right.
Like that was unimaginably corny. But yeah, you missed it earlier, but I said Kendrick's gonna get the secret kid on this next one. I don't know about that. That would be ruthless. That would be insane.
That would be like Maury. Like that would be an episode of Jerry Springer. That would
I
be
mean,
Springer levels of insanity.
I don't know. I guess anything can happen at this point. He says he has 10 in the chamber, right? Like 10 total, it seems.
He says he has multiple tracks. And, you know, the thing is, like, I think, and I was saying this before I hopped on here, like, Kendrick is working at an incredible pace, despite the fact that Drake is supposed to be the one with all the producers, all the collaborators, all the ghostwriters. It's Kendrick who is outwriting and producing more material than Drake is. And I think if Drake came out with a track again, Kendrick would literally just divide and conquer one more time. Even
Yeah.
if Drake put out another track on top of that, anticipating Kendrick would slap another card on the table. Kendrick would come back again and divide and conquer twice.
Yeah, there was a couple lines in here that I actually wanted to mention to you that signals that like at least some of this was either written last night or he knew exactly what the lyrics of Drake's last night release was going to be and he wrote this ahead of time. The homie still doubled down, calling us some slaves. Atlanta was the Mecca, building railroads and trains. That is a direct retaliation to Drake's lines. Drake's actually rather weird and controversial lines that almost doubled down on the statements that Kendrick Lamar was making about Drake having issues with his black identity, where he basically said like, oh, you're rapping like you're freeing slaves, as though, you know, that was, you know, he was just like minimizing Kendrick Lamar's impact in a way that was like, it almost felt like it was written by a white ghostwriter, you know? And he responded to that. So what I want to ask you is like, do you think he knew that that line was already in there?
I've talked about this on stream and pretty much predicted like one of the most obvious things that he could attack Kendrick on one of the potential sore spots. And I think, this battle is all about sort of like popping the other artist's bubble or ruining the public perception of the other artist, or ruining, how that person looks in the eyes of their audience. And one of the most precious things to Kendrick's public image is that he's progressive, he's woke, he's aware, he's
Yeah.
an activist. And that's one of the first things you probably want to go after as Drake. It's like he's not as pro-black as he presents himself to be. He's not as
Yeah.
socially minded as he pretends to be. I don't know if
He was
maybe you're
calling him a
right.
fake
You
socialist.
wrote
He was saying you're a hypocrite. You're rich, but you're a socialist, basically. Like,
Yeah, I mean, in a way. And I can't speak necessarily to whether or not he knew the exact line and flipped the exact line over, but like if I'm Kendrick, it's pretty clear, if I can see and comment beforehand on the likelihood that Drake is going to go after that on some level, Kendrick probably sees it coming too.
I know, but like I said, homie still doubled down calling us some slaves is like a direct reference to something that he like said the night prior.
And this track that Kendrick just came out with, and this is just my first impressions, I guess, it's not as dense with those double, triple, quadruple entendres as like, Euphoria was. Obviously, it's just trying to be more direct, it's trying to be to the point, it's trying to be really catchy, is trying to be really snappy. And, it's not the worse for it. It appeals in a different way. So, to me, that's a line that he could probably, given the writing level that we know he could potentially be at when he wants to be, that's a line that for sure he could probably just like bust out in a minute or two and just have it on the track without even really.
And even bringing in the family matter and the truth of the matter in his last line before the bridge, like, so you're saying that he wrote it fast, like he wrote it last night and pumped this out.
Yeah, that's not writing that would take him too much time to do.
Okay.
Euphoria, I think took a while because that's a really dense track. And he had a lot to say, and he was super careful about like how he structured it and everything. But simultaneously, here's the thing though. I think he was writing Euphoria, and I think he was writing Message to the Grams at the same time. And I don't think he put out Euphoria without having Message to the Grams ready for whenever Drake would inevitably respond.
I wonder if he has like more in store, like in the same vein of like having double releases or potentially like.
I think he's ready for a moment's notice whenever Drake drops his next track. And I don't even know if it's even a guarantee that Drake drops another track at this point. But if he actually does, I think Kendrick's ready to respond immediately. And I think Kendrick's even ready to like throw more shit out there, even if Drake says nothing. I think at this point, Kendrick is going to give Drake the Drake treatment that he was giving him with the Tupac thing. Because obviously Drake, made it a point. You can't really hate on what Kendrick is doing right now, because it's not like Drake was sitting there quiet for the response.
Yeah,
Kendrick was going to respond at some point. It was just going to happen when it happened. But now, like, Drake baited this out of him. Drake asked for this, So, I mean, he's kind of getting what he wanted. He better, is lay in the bed that he made.
The Tupac release was also like, it was a classic Drake mistake, in my opinion. Instead of letting it sit, like trying to egg him on by also opening up a new avenue of attack by like disrespecting a beloved artist and an entire coast of the country, and maybe even like Tupac fans everywhere around and the family of Tupac, only to like reinforce that same dynamic that he's just like kind of a culture vulture. He bought Tupac's ring and he just like carries it around as though they're just like little things that he has bought. I feel like he's doing to himself what Kendrick is also trying to accomplish here as well, only solidifying Kendrick's position that he is looking at it from the outside, looking at this as simply a commodity to be consumed and something to just like flash around. Very insecure, in a very insecure way.
Well, he is doing it to himself, and he has been doing it. What we're seeing right now come from Kendrick is something that we haven't been witnessing for a handful of reasons. Like the only people, or the only crowd of people that would dare call that out, and have a legitimate grievance with it, are people who, are FD signifiers age, who are a little bit older than me. And, I mean, we all like FD signifier, and obviously, his talents and his perceptions, the fact that he's been as successful on YouTube as he has, I mean, it speaks to that. But, he's not the type of guy, and he knows this. He's not the type of guy who Drake's core audience is waiting and hanging on the edge of their seats to hear his opinion on anything. That's not, that audience has no crossover with, Drake. So, him and people who are older than him and, remember the golden age and the hardcore age of hip hop in the 80s and 90s very vividly and, remember the core tenets of the genre that made it what it is today. The kids aren't trying to hear that. The kids don't care. They care about the flash. They care about the flexing. They care about the status. They care about the success. They care about all the things that Drake actually makes his songs about.
Yeah,
Like,
materialistic possessions like that.
right, exactly. So it's like that's their focus and that's what they care the most about, and sort of vaguely kind of being in your feels over a girl who ruined your Bahamas trip. Like that's what it's all about. And the thing is like, younger listeners, even dudes who actually are younger and maybe more clued in to like Kendrick and more alternative forms of hip hop and more lyrical forms of hip hop, even a lot of them don't really want to hear some old head railing about Drake. And beyond that, the only other artists who could potentially take him to task over that are artists that are his contemporaries. And many of them don't really have the wherewithal to do that because, they don't want to risk alienating any potential listeners or any fans by like attacking the big dog, the number one guy in the genre. And a lot of the younger artists out there aren't going to attack Drake because they depend on him to randomly collaborate with them the moment that they have a hot track or a trending moment that he can kind of hop in and make a bigger name for himself off of. We haven't been seeing what Kendrick is doing here because there's not a lot of people who have the capability and the will to actually do it, and now he's actually doing it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. I don't know if it's actually going to have any long-term impacts and actually give anyone any pause and actually see like a lot of the things that he's attacking Drake for is like corny. I mean, as much as like I agree with and I understand and I take issue with a lot of the same things that Kendrick is bringing up, it vis-a-vis how he operates within the music industry. I agree with a lot of his points. Simultaneously, Drake is kind of more of a symptom than he is the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just talking earlier about the fact that like this man is getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars to just hand in whatever album he feels like, regardless of how good it is. And that's a problem. That's a problem. That's going to lead to shit music. And that's why we're getting it. That's why we're getting this vapid, meaningless nothing that is just so non-representative of the genre that it's allegedly supposed to be, that he's allegedly supposed to be the flagship artist for. So, if Drake ends up going away because of this, there just may end up being another Drake that kind of replaces him.
I mean,
It just ends up being a Drake of a different flavor.
yeah, I don't think this is gonna like play a pivotal role in changing the course of like hip hop. I think for the average viewer, myself included, from the sidelines, we're like I said, people are like invested in the drama. Everybody knows Drake. And everybody knows that there's like a lot of sus shit about Drake. So all of that coming in the, all of that being addressed in this way, I think is big and ultimately, inevitably, I mean, people will look to a response from him. But even if he doesn't, like, he's just gonna make another album, a couple months down the line and try to secure as many collaborative projects as possible in that process. Like, he's too big to fail is what I'm saying. Like, people don't just fall apart like that unless they just completely stop making music, in which case their fan base will dwindle a little bit, but like there will still be the diehard riders like Nicki Minaj, as we've talked about before. Like, there's always going to be people that will ride for you, like Ye and Nicki Minaj, and Drake will be like that as well, no matter what happens. But I don't even think that it will get to that point because like he's such a massive commercial success overall. Yeah, he is like a big bank in a sense. It's just not going to happen. But overall, I am interested to see where else Kendrick goes with this. And I would like to see more receipts other than just like, saying that he's a pedophile over and over again, which I think is very funny.
Yeah. No, I mean, same. I think regardless of whether or not Drake responds sooner, later, never, I think Kendrick is not done saying what he's saying. And it sort of seems like he's making bolder accusations, naming more names as he's going along. And I think he's kind of breadcrumbing the process. Like, I knew that with Euphoria, he wasn't saying everything that he was going to say, but I didn't think I thought it was going to be Euphoria and then the nuclear option, whatever that is. And I don't even know if there's a nuclear option at this point. I think he's actually I think this process, as of right now, how he's kind of like, slowly kind of stepping it and dragging it out, it's kind of like water torture. instead.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of like, you know, leaking another track, leaking another track, leaking another track, and the song appeals in a different way. It has a different bit of information, and everybody's eating up every crumb along the way, and it's just, you know, putting Drake on the defensive.
You got JP fan artists weighing in on the beef. Like, this beef has hit Japanese Twitter. Kendrick probably prepared the track to some extent and invited Drake to Instagram, then ambushed him for an answer. Kendrick, please stop. Drake's life is at 0. It's officially international.
Oh my
The
God.
beef has gone worldwide. This is
All right,
awesome.
I'm gonna
But
head
anyway,
out.
thank you, Anthony, for coming on. This was a
for having me
phenomenal
on.
experience. It got me to listen to music, and I have been nonstop for the past week, as a matter of fact.
We'll convert you yet.
One day I'll be a music listener, a
All right, I'll
full
talk to
blown
you
one.
later.
Thank you, Anthony Fantano, the needle drop. As you guys know, thank you so much for coming on. Peace.
Bye.
That was Melon, the internet's busiest music nerd. Everybody always like, I don't listen to music. Well, guess what, dude? I can do a 8-hour and 45-minute nonstop stream of almost entirely rap music beef. Okay,